Greetings, everyone. Tonight, we're not chasing monsters or fighting gods. We're sitting down for a meal. Not just any meal, of course. Tonight's menu includes ambrosia sipped from golden goblets, apples that grant immortality, and honey cakes left beside graves under moonlight. You might find yourself chewing lotus petals, licking nectar from the fingertips of giants, or wondering if that shimmering bowl in front of you is safe to touch, or if it's going to bind your soul for eternity. Because in mythology, food is never just food. Sometimes it's a gift from the gods, sometimes it is the gods, and sometimes it's a test you didn't realize you were taking until you're already halfway through dessert. So settle in, take a deep breath, maybe get a little snack of your own. Something less risky than a glowing fruit or an enchanted roast that regenerates each morning. Wherever you are and whatever time it is there, thanks for joining me tonight. We're about to visit the banquets of Olympus, the harvest fields of the Egyptian afterlife, and the misty, trap-laden feasts of the Celtic otherworld. We'll sip Soma with the Vedic gods, follow Norse heroes into halls echoing with mead-soaked boasts, and leave quiet offerings for ghosts who never lost their appetite. Some of these foods were meant to nourish, some to bind, some to punish, but every bite has a story. So if you've ever wondered what gods eat, or what's on the table in the underworld, you're in the right place. This is the taste of myth. Let's begin with the classics. The glowing, golden, impossible dishes of the divine. First course, the food of the gods. On Mount Olympus, the gods didn't just feast, they glowed. Their food wasn't meat or bread or anything mortals could harvest. It was ambrosia and nectar, shimmering, fragrant, and infused with the essence of immortality itself. Ambrosia wasn't clearly described in ancient texts, but the word suggests something fragrant, soft, and golden. It may have tasted like honey or fruit, or something entirely beyond human comprehension. It was typically served by Hebe, the goddess of youth, or Ganymede, the beautiful Trojan boy Zeus snatched up to be cupbearer. Nectar, the divine drink, was just as essential. Some said it was pink and sweet, others that it was light as mist. Either way, it flowed freely at Olympian feasts, poured into crystal cups and drunk in long, laughing sips by gods who would never wrinkle, fade, or die. Ambrosia and nectar didn't just feed, they sustained divinity. They separated the gods from the mortals. In some myths, even a mortal who tasted ambrosia could become ageless. But usually, it didn't end well. Stealing food from Olympus was a dangerous hobby. Still, the idea that a single bite or sip could unlock immortality never left the human imagination. We've been chasing that recipe ever since. But not all divine food was served on mountaintops. Sometimes it hung from a tree, guarded, glowing, and ready to ruin everything. In a garden at the edge of the world, apples shimmered like the sun. These weren't orchard fruit. They were golden apples, grown on a tree Hera received as a wedding gift. They were said to grant eternal youth to anyone who took a bite. They were also heavily guarded by a dragon named Ladon and tended by nymphs called the Hesperides. And yet, one apple made it out. At a certain wedding, which Eris, goddess of discord, was not invited to, she threw one of these apples onto the table, carved with the words, "To the fairest." What followed was not dessert, but disaster. 3 goddesses fought over it, Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite. Paris, a mortal prince of Troy, was chosen to decide. He gave it to Aphrodite, who promised him the love of the most beautiful woman in the world, Helen. That apple didn't just sparkle, It launched 1,000 ships. Golden apples became symbols of temptation, competition, and the price of desire. In other myths, like those of Atalanta, apples are distractions. In some versions of the Garden of Eden, the forbidden fruit is even imagined as a golden apple. But not every divine fruit caused war. Some were hidden high in the mountains of China, ripening slowly for a very different purpose. In the oldest layers of Hindu mythology, there's a drink more mysterious than ambrosia, more sacred than nectar. Its name is Soma. Soma was both a drink and a deity. It was pressed from a plant whose identity remains debated to this day. Some say it was a hallucinogenic mushroom. Others think it was ephedra, cannabis, or a now extinct herb. Whatever it was, Soma was revered. It was poured onto altars, consumed in ritual, and offered to the gods, particularly Indra and Agni. It was said to bring strength, inspiration, even immortality. Drinking Soma brought you closer to the divine, filled you with poetic fire, and opened the mind to higher truths. The Rig Veda sings its praises endlessly. We have drunk Soma and become immortal. We have attained the light the gods discovered. Soma wasn't just a beverage. It was a bridge between mortal and divine, used by priests and poets alike. It's one of the earliest examples of sacred food and drink as a tool for transcendence, something echoed in countless later traditions, from Greek wine cults to Christian communion. But while Soma faded from ritual over the centuries, its echoes remained in other cultures, including in a mountain orchard, where divine peaches bloomed only once every 3,000 years. In Chinese mythology, immortality doesn't come in a cup. It grows on a branch. Deep in the gardens of Xiwangmu, the Queen Mother of the West, grow the peaches of immortality. These celestial fruits don't ripen like normal peaches. They take millennia to reach maturity. But when they finally do, one bite is said to grant eternal life. Xiwangmu guards them fiercely. The trees are planted atop Kunlun Mountain, a sacred and otherworldly realm where only the worthy or the very lucky may travel. Every few thousand years, a great banquet is held. Only the highest gods are invited, and the peach is the star of the feast. Even the mischievous Monkey King couldn't resist. In Journey to the West, he sneaks into the orchard, gorges himself on peaches before they're fully ripe, and causes cosmic chaos. The gods were not amused. Unlike Greek ambrosia, which was served daily, these peaches were rare, ceremonial, and incredibly precious. They symbolize patience, harmony with nature, and rewards earned over long spans of time. But not all divine drinks are so slow. Some are stolen, brewed in secret, and chugged by gods with a knack for mischief. Let's fly north now, to Odin, and the mead that made poetry possible. Not all wisdom comes from scrolls. In Norse mythology, it comes in liquid form, the mead of poetry. The story starts, like many Norse tales, with a war. After the conflict between the gods and the Vanir, they sealed peace by spitting into a cauldron. This mixture was turned into a being named Kvasir, wise, kind, and clever. Kvasir was later murdered by two dwarves, who drained his blood and mixed it with honey, creating a magical mead that gave anyone who drank it the power of poetry and eloquence. Eventually, a giant named Suttung got hold of it and hid it in a mountain, guarded by his daughter. Odin, ever hungry for knowledge, shapeshifted, tricked his way inside, seduced the daughter, and drank all the mead, then escaped in the form of an eagle, belching verses as he flew. From then on, true poets were said to be blessed with Odin's mead. But sloppy poets, they got the leftovers. The Norse had a term for bad poetry, the mead of the bird's backside. Poetry, wisdom, and fermented courage, all in one brew. But Odin wasn't the only god chasing a sacred drink. In Hindu myth, another elixir emerged, not from a cauldron, but from the churning of the cosmic ocean itself. When gods and demons churn the ocean together, you know something big is brewing. In Hindu mythology, amrita is the nectar of immortality, the counterpart to Greek ambrosia or Norse mead. It wasn't brewed or grown. It was extracted from the very ocean of milk in an epic event called the Samudra Manthan. To churn the ocean, the gods and demons used Mount Mandara as the stick and a giant serpent, Vasuki, as the rope. As they pulled back and forth, treasures began to surface, jewels, goddesses, and finally, a golden pot of amrita. Naturally, both sides wanted it. A fierce struggle broke out. Vishnu took on a beautiful form, Mohini, to trick the demons and distribute the nectar only to the gods. One demon disguised himself and snuck a sip. But before he could swallow, his head was cut off. His head became Rahu, a celestial being who causes eclipses in revenge. Amrita represents more than just divine refreshment. It's a cosmic reward, a source of power, and a symbol of eternal life that's never easily earned, whether sipped, bitten, brewed, or stolen. The food of the gods was never just food. But what about the afterlife? Once you've passed the threshold, what's on the table? Next, we visit the menus of eternity. Let's start with the most famous bite in mythology. In the Garden of Eden, food wasn't just nourishment, it was a test. According to the biblical story in Genesis, Adam and Eve lived in paradise, free to eat anything, except the fruit from one specific tree, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. You already know how that turned out. Tempted by a serpent, Eve takes a bite. She gives some to Adam. Their eyes open. They feel shame. And just like that, innocence is gone, and they're exiled from paradise. The fruit is never named. Over time, it became an apple in Western art, possibly due to a Latin pun. Malum means both apple and evil. But the story's weight doesn't lie in the type of fruit. It lies in what it represents, the hunger to know more, even at a cost. That moment, one bite, reshapes the world. Mortality enters. Labor begins. The gates of Eden shut behind them. And yet, that bite also brings awareness, identity, and the human condition. Food becomes a symbol of change, not just for the body, but for the soul. But not every offering brings such chaos. Some are small, sweet, and meant for the dead. In ancient Greece, food wasn't only for the living. The dead had their taste too, and they preferred honey. Melituta, or honey cakes, were among the most common offerings given to the departed. These small, round cakes were left at graves, burned on altars, or dropped into the earth as gifts to chthonic gods and restless spirits. Honey, with its golden color and preservative powers, symbolized both sweetness and eternity. The cakes weren't just treats. They were a form of currency, a gentle bribe to keep the dead at peace or to guide a soul safely to the underworld. Sometimes they were left for psychopomps, divine guides like Hermes or Charon, to ease a journey. Other times, they honored ancestors during festivals like Antisteria, when the dead were believed to visit the world of the living. In Greek thought, forgetting to feed the dead was risky. Unfed spirits might return, angry and hungry. Fed ones, by contrast, could offer protection and favor. So while the honey cake might seem modest, it carried weight, a way of saying, I remember you, I honor you. I haven't let you fade. But not all sacred food was made by human hands. Some fell from the sky. In the biblical book of Exodus, the Israelites wandered the desert for 40 years. Food was scarce, morale was low, complaints were high. And then manna appeared. It was described as small white flakes, like frost on the ground. When collected, it could be baked into cakes. It tasted like wafers made with honey, sweet, subtle, satisfying. But it came with rules. Manna fell with the morning dew and melted by midday. You could only gather what you needed for that day. Hoarding it led to rot and worms, except on the day before the Sabbath, when you were allowed to collect double. On that day alone, it kept fresh. The lesson wasn't just divine nutrition. It was trust, dependence, rhythm, a spiritual kind of portion control. Manna became more than food. It was a test of faith. Would you follow instructions? Would you believe tomorrow's meal would come? And for those who did, it sustained them for decades. But manna wasn't the only magical food with consequences. In other traditions, the moment you eat, you're trapped. No instructions given. In Celtic and fairy folklore, the worst thing you can do in the other world is accept a snack. It's always beautiful. Golden apples, sparkling wine, cakes with impossible aromas. The fair folk don't serve bland food. But if you eat it, even a bite, you may never return. This theme echoes across stories. In Thomas the Rhymer, a mortal man kisses a fairy queen and is whisked to her realm. She warns him not to eat. He obeys and returns home 7 years later, changed forever. Other tales aren't so lucky. Some souls eat, forget their pasts, and become part of the Fae court. Others return home, only to find centuries have passed. Fairy food isn't just nourishment, it's enchantment, a spell disguised as supper. And the rules aren't posted anywhere. The food always looks perfect. But that's the trick. It's not meant for humans. And once it's inside you, neither are you. Still, not all food in myth is about reward or punishment. Some is meant to open doors in the mind. Sometimes you don't eat to live, you eat to see. In ancient Delphi, the oracle of Apollo sat atop a tripod, breathing fumes from a chasm in the earth. But before she spoke, she often chewed bay leaves, believed to be sacred and possibly psychoactive. Other rituals used food to open the gates of insight. In some mystery religions, initiates consume special cakes or potions believed to unlock hidden knowledge. In ancient Egypt, dream bread laced with blue lotus might induce visions during temple sleep rituals. In Mesoamerica, psychoactive mushrooms were eaten to commune with gods and ancestors. They called them flesh of the gods. These meals weren't casual. They were sacred steps into altered states, eaten under guidance within ritual for a purpose. But sometimes, the gods weren't so gentle, because if myth gives us sacred meals, it also gives us famine, cursed banquets, hunger turned into punishment. In mythology, nothing spoils a meal faster than divine disappointment. Take the Theban tragedy of Tantalus. He invited the gods to dinner and to test their omniscience, served them a stew made from his own son. The gods, offended but aware, refused. Except for Demeter, distracted by grief, who ate a shoulder. The child was revived. Tantalus was punished. His fate, eternal thirst and hunger. In the underworld, he stands in a pool of water beneath a fruit tree. But whenever he reaches, the water recedes and the fruit lifts away. Hence the word tantalizing. In other myths, famine is a tool. When mortals forget the gods, crops wither. When oaths are broken, the land dies. The food vanishes not because of nature, but because of pride. Even gods themselves can starve. In the Iliad, when Apollo is insulted, he sends plague. Crops fail, bodies pile up. It's not just a story of war. It's about how fragile abundance is when divine order is ignored. Food in myth isn't always sweet or sacred. Sometimes it's a warning. For someone with the strength to wrestle lions and clean stables with a river, Heracles had a surprisingly human appetite. Between his labors, the great Greek hero didn't just sleep. He ate, and then ate some more. Food, in Heracles' story, is fuel. He roasts the Nemean lion he just defeated. He feasts with kings and strangers. He even wins the right to marry by eating more than anyone else at the table. Gluttony? Maybe. But also survival. Each meal is a pause in a life of punishment. Later myths place him among the gods, sipping ambrosia beside Zeus. But even divine food can't erase his hunger-driven past. His meals echo with exhaustion, rage, and the kind of emptiness you can't fill with olives and bread. And speaking of emptiness, our next hero was surrounded by food, yet couldn't take a single bite. Jason's journey with the Argonauts is full of danger. Dragons, enchantresses, golden sheep. But one of the most haunting episodes takes place not in battle, but at a dinner table. In Thrace, the Argonauts meet King Phineus, a seer cursed by the gods. His punishment, an endless banquet, ruined. Every time food is placed before him, harpies swoop in, shrieking, clawing, spoiling the dishes. The air turns rancid. The king is left starving in the midst of plenty. Jason and his crew chase the harpies away, earning a place at the table. It's one of the rare times myth shows hunger as a punishment not of poverty, but of proximity. Phineus reminds us, sometimes the cruelest hunger isn't when food is gone. It's when it's right in front of you, and still out of reach. But not all mythic meals involve monsters in the sky. Some are far more subtle, far more dangerous. Just one bite, and your memories slip away. When Odysseus lands on the island of the Lotus Eaters, he doesn't face swords or storms, just flowers. The locals are gentle, their smiles dreamy, and their diet, lotus fruit. It's sweet, calming, and completely treacherous. The moment Odysseus's men taste it, they forget home. They forget their mission. They forget why they ever cared about leaving. The fruit doesn't poison the body. It poisons intent. Odysseus has to drag his crew back to the ship, weeping, begging to stay. The lotus teaches him that danger isn't always violent. Sometimes it's gentle, delicious, and addictive. In this tale, food isn't about hunger. It's about memory, identity, the choice to go on, or fade into comfort. Other myths treat food as revelation. But in the world's oldest epic, a single loaf carries the weight of mortality itself. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, the king sets out to escape death. He crosses oceans, mountains, even the edge of the world. And at the end of it all, he meets Utnapishtim, the man who survived the Great Flood and was granted immortality. Gilgamesh begs for the secret. Instead, he's offered sleep and bread. It's a test. Utnapishtim asks Gilgamesh to stay awake for 7 days, to prove he's worthy of life eternal. But Gilgamesh, exhausted, dozes off immediately. Each day, Utnapishtim's wife bakes a loaf of bread and places it beside him. By the time he wakes, the mouldy, stale loaves are stacked in silence. Food becomes a calendar, a proof of time passing, a gentle, devastating lesson. Gilgamesh, fails the trial. He is sent home not with immortality, but with understanding. The bread he couldn't eat shows him. Life is fleeting, and that's the point. But not all heroic meals are quiet meditations. Some are invitations and traps rolled into one. In Irish myth, Cuchulainn is a whirlwind of blood and bravery, but even he must face one final meal. It's called the gaze, a kind of sacred taboo or obligation. Cuchulainn has sworn never to eat dog meat, but when a poor woman offers it to him as a guest in her home, he faces a choice: break his oath or insult her hospitality. He eats, and in doing so, he breaks the magical protections that kept him alive. Soon after, he meets his death, but not before tying himself to a stone, so he can die standing. The food wasn't poisoned, it was cursed by context. In myth, food is rarely just food. It's ethics, obligation, the weight of choices wrapped in hospitality, and sometimes it's also beer, mead, and loud poetry, as our final hero well knows. In Beowulf, the first thing warriors do after a monster attack is throw a party. Heorot, the great mead hall of King Hrothgar, is where alliances are forged, glories recounted, and cups never empty. The mead flows like a river, and so do the boasts. Each man speaks of past battles, future victories, and personal legends, all under the warm glow of torchlight. This isn't just socializing, it's ritual. In a world without written records, stories are meals too, served with drink and consumed in company. But feasting in Heorot is also dangerous. The hall draws Grendel, the monster who cannot bear the sound of joy. He attacks night after night, until Beowulf arrives. The battle that follows is legendary, but it begins and ends with mead. Food and drink are more than celebration. They summon monsters, heroes, and memory alike. In Norse mythology, every day is a barbecue in Valhalla. The warriors of the afterlife, the Einherjar, train all day and then feast each night. Their main course, Serimnir, a magical boar who is slaughtered, roasted, devoured, and then comes back to life good as new the next morning. This isn't just culinary convenience, it's cosmic efficiency. Serimnir never runs out, never spoils, and never resents the arrangement. At least, not that we're told. The meat provides strength for battle, while Heidrun, a goat who grazes on the roof of Valhalla, provides endless mead from her udders. Forget bottomless brunch. This is bottomless mead, straight from a divine goat. The concept of endlessly regenerating food echoes across myths. In some Hindu stories, divine cows like Kamadhenu grant infinite sustenance. In the Mahabharata, the Akshaya Patra is a vessel that never runs empty, unless you try to sneak a second dinner after it's been washed. These meals reflect more than hunger. They show a universe where consumption is constant, but nothing is truly lost. Eating doesn't end life. It sustains it in an eternal loop. But not all creatures enjoy the luxury of being eaten and revived. Some meals, once consumed, shift the balance of the cosmos, or mark the beginning of something bigger, which leads us to the next course on this mythological menu. What if cooking wasn't just about eating, but about creating the world itself? In some myths, the kitchen is where the cosmos begins. In Hawaiian mythology, the goddess Pele, goddess of volcanoes, brings fire and heat not just for destruction, but to cook, to transform, to birth land from lava. Fire becomes a culinary and creative force. In Chinese mythology, one version of the world's beginning involves a cosmic egg. Within it, chaos churns. When it cracks open, The yolk becomes the earth, the whites the heavens. It's a breakfast metaphor turned cosmology. And in many Aboriginal Dreamtime stories, ancestral beings sing, walk, and cook the land into being, literally shaping the world as they move and eat. Food and creation are inseparable. In Vedic rituals, offerings are burned into flames, food becoming energy, smoke, and divine favor. Fire transforms raw grains into sacrifice, and through sacrifice, gods maintain the world. Sometimes creation is a pot slowly boiling, not a bang, but a simmer. Gods cook oceans into clouds, shape animals from dough, or breathe over rice fields to populate the earth. In these stories, cooking isn't a survival tactic. It's how everything starts. But just as some deities create with fire and food, others devour. Not in metaphor, but in mythic horror. The meal doesn't build the world, it tears it down. Next up, the monsters who don't wait for dinner. They make you the main course. Not all mythical eaters are polite dinner guests. Some don't ask. They consume, whole, alive, and often with cosmic consequences. Take Cronus, the Greek Titan. Told his children would overthrow him. He chose the most obvious parenting method. He swallowed them. All of them. One by one. Only baby Zeus escaped, swapped for a rock. The rest were stuck in Dad's stomach until Zeus returned, made him vomit them back up, and sparked a divine revolution. Cronus isn't alone. Across the world, creatures eat humans not out of malice, but because that's just what they do. In Hindu lore, Rakshasas stalk battlefields and forests, drawn to blood and flesh. Japanese Oni boil people in iron pots. Ghouls in Arabic myth dig up graves for a midnight snack. And in Inuit stories, Kalupalik snatch children for mysterious, usually unsavory reasons. But monstrous hunger isn't always villainous. Sometimes it reflects nature's own cycle, consuming to recycle. It's terrifying because it mirrors what we know. We all get eaten eventually, by fire, by earth, by time. And yet, these stories often end with escape, rebirth, or revenge. The eaten fight back. The swallowed become liberators. Even in the belly of the beast, mythology reminds us. The story isn't over yet, but some hungers never stop. They grow until they end the world. Let's head to the final course now, when feasts aren't just about food, but about endings. At the end of all things, someone is always hungry. In Norse myth, Ragnarok is the grand finale, a time when gods fall, giants rise, and the world burns. And somewhere in that chaos is Fenrir, the great wolf. Born of Loki and a giantess, Fenrir was chained by the gods, and he didn't take it well. At Ragnarok, he breaks free. First, he bites off Tyr's hand. Then, he opens his jaws so wide he swallows Odin himself. Fenrir isn't dining. He's devouring fate. The meal is symbolic. The collapse of order, the consumption of leadership, the raw, primal hunger that ends things. It's not just wolves either. The Midgard serpent, Jörmungandr, poisons the sea. Surt, the fire giant, burns everything. Even the goat in Valhalla, once a peaceful mead dispenser, probably goes dry. This isn't a polite closing. It's mythological entropy. And yet, after the last bite, silence. Then, renewal. A green world, a soft light. Survivors emerge, a new sun rises, and somewhere a boar might already be roasting for the next feast. Because in mythology, even the end is just a pause between meals. And that brings us to our final chapter. Let's step away from the firelight and digest what we've learned. You've walked through firelit halls, eaten with ghosts and bitten into secrets. You've tasted pomegranates that bind, mead that inspires, and bread that humbles kings. Across every mythology, food isn't just food. It's a key, a bargain, a memory wrapped in taste. Sometimes it's the promise of immortality. Sometimes it's a punishment disguised as a gift. A golden apple can start a war. A slice of fruit can lock you in the underworld. A sip of honeyed wine might mean you never wake up, or that you finally see clearly for the first time. The stories remind us that meals are never just about hunger. They're about connection, between gods and mortals, between the living and the not quite. Even the simplest offering, a cake left by the door, a cup of water whispered over, carries weight, meaning, magic. So if tonight's journey made you a little hungrier, maybe that's the point. Hungrier for old stories, for quiet rituals, for wonder disguised as something sweet and strange on the tip of your tongue. Wherever you are and whatever time it is there, thanks for sharing this meal with me tonight. Sleep well, and maybe leave a little offering on the windowsill, just in case.